Welcome to Inside True Stories, the place where real-life heroes, shocking betrayals, and inspiring journeys come alive. Here, we bring you stories of courage, resilience, and triumph. Stories that reveal the human spirit at its strongest. From veterans fighting for justice to ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges, our channel uncovers the truth behind the headlines and shares the lessons, struggles, and victories that inspire us all. Subscribe and join us as we explore the most compelling true stories you won't want to miss. Marcus Williams had always been a man defined by discipline, integrity, and devotion, both to his country and to his family. Growing up on the sprawling Williams Ranch, he learned the value of hard work from his father, who had spent decades tending the land with calloused hands and unwavering pride. The ranch was more than a property. It was a legacy, a symbol of resilience and family tradition that had been passed down for generations. Every morning, Marcus would rise before dawn, walking the fields, inspecting the fences, and feeding the livestock. He carried the lessons of his father close to his heart. A man who honors his land, honors his life. These words shaped Marcus into a man who understood responsibility, commitment, and loyalty. When Marcus enlisted in the army, he carried these values with him overseas. His service took him to dangerous locations where courage was measured not in medals, but in survival and the lives he saved. Yet, even in the harshest deserts and most perilous battlefields, his thoughts often returned home to the ranch. The barns his father had built, the rolling fields, and the quiet moments of peace he longed to reclaim. After years of deployment and countless sacrifices, Marcus had finally taken ownership of the ranch. Every dollar he earned, every moment he could spare, went into restoring the land and preserving the family legacy. The ranch was his sanctuary, a place where he could heal, dream, and one day pass on the same legacy to his children. Neighbors admired Marcus for his work ethic and humility. He was a quiet hero, respected but never boastful. Then came another call to duty. Marcus was deployed once again, answering the nation's call without hesitation. He left the ranch in good faith, trusting the Homeowners Association and the local community to maintain order during his absence. To him, the HOA was simply a bureaucratic necessity, a group responsible for minor oversight. Nothing more. On the eve of his departure, Marcus walked the perimeter of the ranch one last time. His hand rested on the gatepost carved by his father decades ago. "I'll be back soon," he whispered, a promise as much to himself as to the land he loved. He could never have imagined that while he fought for his country, the very land he cherished would be taken from him. The suburban streets surrounding the Williams Ranch had always seemed quiet and orderly. The kind of neighborhood where everyone nodded politely at each other and life moved at a steady, predictable pace. But beneath this calm facade, the local Homeowners Association operated like a small kingdom, one driven not by community, but by ambition, greed, and power. The HOA board was led by Richard Halpern, a man who prided himself on control and influence. Richard had never set foot on a battlefield, never worked a plow, and had no love for the land he governed. To him, property was currency and power, and Marcus's sprawling ranch at the edge of the community was far too valuable to remain under the care of someone who might return one day. Shortly after Marcus's deployment, the HOA began its plan. Notices were sent claiming unpaid fees and violations of property regulations, including minor things like fence maintenance, barn upkeep, and landscaping details. What Marcus did not know was that many of these notices never reached him. They were deliberately timed and routed to make it appear he had ignored them. Inside the HOA boardroom, Richard whispered to his allies, his voice cold and calculating. "Carter's gone overseas. No one is watching. We can claim the land is abandoned and sell it to the developer. Think of the profit, the increased property value for the rest of us." The other board members hesitated. After all, Marcus was a respected veteran. But Richard was persuasive, offering promises of lower HOA dues and small financial incentives for compliance. Gradually, the board fell into line, approving foreclosure proceedings without hesitation or conscience. The legal filings were deceptively simple. The HOA cited failure to maintain the property and non-response to notices. As justification, court hearings were scheduled while Marcus was halfway across the globe. By the time he could have intervened, the paperwork had already been signed off, and the ranch was placed on the market for sale. Neighbors whispered about the injustice, but remained silent. Fearful of retaliation from the HOA, a few tried calling Marcus's family, but they lived out of state, and his mother had passed years ago. The community's quiet fear ensured the HOA's actions went largely unchallenged. By the time Marcus returned from deployment, the ranch, a symbol of his family's legacy, had been sold to a wealthy developer. Machinery had begun tearing into the land. Stakes marked boundaries for new construction, and his barns were left neglected. The betrayal was complete. Richard Halpern and his cronies celebrated in private, toasting their victory over someone they believed powerless. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. Marcus Williams was not a man to surrender, and he had trained for battles far greater than what they could imagine. The stage was set for the fight of his life. And this time, the battlefield was at home. After months of deployment, Marcus Williams finally set foot back on American soil. The familiar scent of pine and earth, the warmth of the sun on his face, even the hum of distant traffic. Everything felt like a balm after the harsh deserts and gunfire he had endured overseas. He had survived ambushes, navigated hostile terrain, and led his fellow soldiers through life and death situations. Yet nothing could have prepared him for what awaited at home. Driving toward the ranch, Marcus imagined the gate creaking open, horses neighing in recognition, and the sprawling fields waiting to welcome him back. He pictured walking across the familiar dirt paths, feeling the ground beneath his boots, and touching the barn doors his father had built decades ago. These thoughts carried him through months of fear and uncertainty, keeping hope alive even in the darkest hours. But as the ranch came into view, Marcus's heart sank. The gate was gone, replaced by a cold, metal barrier he did not recognize. A large, bold-souled sign was nailed to the post, fluttering in the breeze. His breath caught, and the world seemed to tilt around him. He stepped out of his vehicle, the gravel crunching beneath his boots, and approached the fence. Beyond it, unfamiliar machinery tore into the earth, marking plots for new development. His barns, once sturdy and proud, now stood neglected and crooked. Strangers moved across the property, their voices casual, unaware that this land had been his family's legacy for generations. "Can I help you, sir?" a young worker asked, noticing Marcus staring through the fence. Marcus's voice was low but firm. "This is my land." The worker shook his head. "Not anymore. The HOA sold it weeks ago. Legal paperwork and everything." Marcus's chest tightened. He felt a wave of disbelief, then anger, then a simmering determination. Months of fighting overseas, risking his life for freedom and honor. And here at home, men in suits had taken what was his. He stormed into town, demanding answers at the county office. There, he saw the documents, deeds, foreclosure papers, and HOA filings, all bearing dates when he was deployed. The signatures were there, but Marcus knew immediately they were not his. The realization hit like a punch. The betrayal was deliberate, premeditated. That evening, Marcus sat in a quiet motel room, surrounded by the stack of paperwork. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the burning sense of injustice. For the first time, he felt a kind of helplessness he had never known, not from the battlefield, but from a system that had failed him at home. Yet beneath the despair, a spark ignited. Marcus had survived combat. He had led men through impossible odds. And now, on his own soil, he would fight. Not with weapons, but with courage, strategy, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The ranch may have been taken, but Marcus Williams had returned, and the real battle was just beginning. The next morning, Marcus walked into a local law office, his military uniform still crisp from the trip home. He laid out the stack of foreclosure notices, deeds, and HOA letters. Before attorney Sarah Thompson, a seasoned lawyer with a reputation for handling property disputes, "This is outrageous," Marcus said, his voice steady but tense. "I served my country overseas. While I was gone, the HOA took my property. They sold my family's ranch behind my back. I need this reversed." Sarah studied the documents carefully, her brow furrowed. "Legally, this is complicated," she explained. The HOA followed certain procedural steps, or at least, they claimed they did. Courts often favor documented compliance over the absence of the owner. Even for deployed service, "We can fight this, but it will be an uphill battle." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I don't care how hard it is. I will not let them steal what my family built." Weeks passed as Marcus and Sarah filed motions, gathered evidence, and prepared for the hearing. Yet each court date brought new frustrations. The HOA's lawyers were relentless, presenting certified letters, procedural paperwork, and claims of ignored violations. Their tactics were designed to wear him down, to make him feel powerless. In the courtroom, Marcus sat upright, his medals gleaming on his uniform, a silent reminder of his service. Across the aisle, Richard Halpern and the HOA board exuded confidence, convinced the legal system would shield them. "Your Honor," the HOA lawyer began, "Mr. Williams failed to respond to multiple notices. The foreclosure and sale were entirely legal and binding." Sarah countered, presenting evidence that Marcus had been deployed and never received proper notification. She argued that federal law protects active-duty military personnel from civil actions during deployment, but the judge, weary and bound by the constraints of paperwork, expressed sympathy yet emphasized the technicalities. "While I understand Sergeant Williams' situation, the court is bound by the evidence presented. Unless more compelling evidence is submitted, the foreclosure may stand." Marcus left the courtroom that day with a knot in his chest. For the first time, he felt something he had rarely experienced on the battlefield: true helplessness in the face of bureaucracy. The system seemed stacked against him, and the ranch he had fought so hard to preserve hung in the balance. But Marcus was not one to surrender. Every soldier he had led in combat had faced impossible odds, yet they had persevered. Now he would approach this fight with the same strategy and determination. The legal walls were high, but he began to see cracks, small inconsistencies, forged signatures, and suspicious actions by the For Marcus, this was only the beginning. The initial legal struggle may have been discouraging, but it had also revealed a critical truth. The HOA had grown arrogant, and arrogance always left traces. He would find those traces, he would gather evidence, and he would not stop until justice was served. Marcus sat in his motel room late one night, the stack of HOA paperwork spread before him like a battlefield map. Each comment, each signature, each notice seemed to mock him. Yet, amidst the frustration, one thought kept surfacing. "I didn't fight alongside men overseas to back down at home." He reached for his phone and began contacting his former army brothers. Men he had trained, marched, and fought beside. Within days, several of them arrived in town. They were a diverse group, hardened by war, but loyal beyond measure. They understood Marcus in a way civilians never could. Where others saw legal documents and bureaucracy, they saw a fight worth joining. Marcus shared what he had uncovered: forged signatures, suspicious court filings, and a clear pattern of abuse by the HOA board. His friends listened intently, their military precision coming alive in strategy discussions. Each one offered unique skills: research, documentation, public relations, and negotiation. Together, they formed a plan. Meanwhile, Marcus also reached out to a local journalist, Emily Reyes, who had a reputation for exposing injustice. At first, Marcus hesitated. Soldiers are trained to fight quietly, not broadcast their battles. But Emily explained, "If people see this, they will care. And when the public is watching, corrupt organizations can't hide." The story hit the local newspapers first, then spread online. Headlines blared: "HOA steals soldier's ranch while he serves overseas. A betrayal at home." The response was overwhelming. Veterans groups, community members, and even strangers began sending letters of support, funds for legal fees, and messages of encouragement. People who had once remained silent were emboldened. Realizing Marcus's fight represented a broader struggle against injustice, word spread through the neighborhood too. Neighbors who had previously whispered about unfair fines and harassment now came forward with their own stories. Together, these testimonies painted a picture of a corrupt HOA preying on homeowners while hiding behind legal loopholes. When Marcus and his team attended the next HOA meeting, The dynamic had shifted. The boardroom, once filled with smug confidence, now felt tense. Veterans stood firmly. Neighbors voiced their concerns, and Emily documented every word. Marcus's voice cut through the room. "You thought you could steal my ranch while I served my country. You thought I would return and do nothing. You forgot who I am. I don't back down from a fight." For the first time, Richard Alpener's smirk faltered. Marcus had changed the battlefield. No longer was he a single veteran fighting against a system. He was a leader, commanding a united front of soldiers, neighbors, and supporters. The tide was turning. Marcus had discovered the HOA's weakness, arrogance, and corruption leave trails, and now he had the allies, the evidence, and the attention to expose it. The fight for the ranch was far from over. But Marcus had reclaimed something even more powerful. Momentum. The momentum Marcus had gained with his army brothers and Emily Reyes. Reporting quickly grew into something much larger than a personal fight. Word spread beyond the small town. Veterans from neighboring states, advocacy groups, and families who had suffered under the same HOA reached out, offering support, advice, and manpower. On a sunny Saturday morning, the street outside the HOA building was alive with action. Veterans in uniform stood shoulder to shoulder with neighbors holding signs. "Justice for Marcus Williams. Stop HOA corruption. Protect our homes. Protect our families." Children ran between the crowd, waving banners, while local media crews set up cameras, capturing every moment of the growing movement. The air was electric with purpose, and Marcus felt a sense of unity he hadn't experienced even on the battlefield. The community's support went beyond protest. Volunteers helped Marcus document the HOA's misconduct, organize meetings, and collect testimonies from residents who had long suffered in silence. Retired veterans assisted with legal research, while some neighbors provided photographs, copies of HOA notices, and eyewitness accounts. Each piece of evidence added weight to Marcus's case, revealing a pattern of abuse, intimidation, and forgery. Even the most timid neighbors found their courage. One elderly couple, who had quietly battled excessive fines for years, stepped forward publicly, recounting their experience in front of cameras. Another resident shared that the HOA had attempted to manipulate votes in their favor, exposing a systemic issue that went beyond Marcus's ranch. As the support grew, Richard Halpern and the HOA board began to feel the pressure. Their confident veneer cracked under the weight of public scrutiny, media attention, and a growing network of determined veterans and citizens demanding justice. Marcus addressed the crowd one evening, standing in front of his army brothers and neighbors. "We are not here for revenge. We are here for justice. For our homes, our families, and our community." They thought one man could be silenced. They were wrong. "Together, we will make this right." The sense of camaraderie and purpose was palpable. Marcus had turned his fight into a movement, transforming anger into action. Veterans who had once stood beside him on foreign battlefields were now standing with him on American soil. Neighbors were finding their voice, and the public spotlight illuminated the corruption that had once been hidden. For the first time, Marcus felt not only hope, but certainty. The HOA could not withstand the combined force of truth, unity, and relentless determination. The stage was set for the next phase. The climactic courtroom showdown, where justice would finally be delivered. The courthouse was packed. Veterans in uniform, neighbors who had come forward, and media crews filled the benches. Cameras recorded every detail, while reporters scribbled notes feverishly. Marcus walked through the doors, standing tall in his dress uniform, a visible testament to his service and resolve. Behind him were his army brothers, loyal friends, and supporters, a living reminder that he no longer fought alone. Across the courtroom, Richard Halpern and the HOA's lawyers looked uneasy. Their confident smirks had faded as news of the community's rally and widespread media attention reached them. The legal battlefield they had assumed was theirs to dominate had shifted dramatically. The proceedings began. The HOA's counsel presented their case first, reiterating the same arguments that had previously stalled Marcus. All procedures were followed. Notices were sent. The sale of the property was lawful. Their words echoed through the courtroom, intended to intimidate and overwhelm. Marcus's attorney, Sarah Thompson, rose to present the evidence that would dismantle their claims. Handing documents to the judge and counsel, she highlighted forged signatures on official documents proving the foreclosure was not legitimate. Emails and internal HOA communications showing premeditated plans to seize the ranch. Testimonies from neighbors and homeowners who had been similarly harassed or threatened. Then Marcus himself took the stand. His voice, calm yet commanding, carried across the room. I served overseas, risking my life for my country. While I was gone, the organization that was supposed to uphold fairness seized my family's ranch. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, and if it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone in this community. The courtroom was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. The judge studied the documents, the testimonies, and Marcus's unwavering demeanor. The evidence was undeniable. Finally, the gavel struck. This court finds the foreclosure unlawful. The property of Sergeant Marcus Williams is hereby restored to him. The HOA's actions are deemed deliberate and improper, and the organization will be investigated for misconduct. Cheers erupted. Veterans saluted, neighbors wept tears of relief, and cameras captured the emotional moment. Marcus exhaled for the first time in months, a wave of relief washing over him. The ranch, his family's legacy, was returned, and justice had been served. Richard Halpern, once so confident, was escorted from the courtroom. His empire of intimidation had crumbled, exposed to the light of truth and the power of community. Marcus stepped outside the courthouse, greeted by applause from friends, neighbors, and supporters. The battle had been long, arduous, and emotionally draining. But the victory was not just his. It belonged to everyone who had stood by him, fought alongside him, and refused to let corruption prevail. The ranch was more than restored. Marcus's faith in justice, community, and the unwavering bond of brotherhood had been reaffirmed. The first morning back on the ranch felt almost surreal to Marcus Williams. The gate, freshly repaired, swung open under his hand as the sunlight poured over the rolling fields. The barns, though weathered, stood as proud monuments to his family's legacy. For the first time in months, Marcus felt the peace he had imagined countless times while deployed. A sense of belonging, of home reclaimed. But this victory was not his alone. Veterans, neighbors, and friends who had stood by him throughout the battle helped restore what had been damaged. Together, they repaired fences, repainted barns, and cleared overgrown paths. Laughter echoed across the fields as children ran freely, while Marcus watched, a mix of relief and gratitude swelling in his chest. Emily Reyes, the journalist who had helped tell his story, captured the moment on camera. She approached Marcus, notebook in hand. "You didn't just get your ranch back," she said. "You inspired a whole community to stand up for what's right." Marcus nodded, smiling quietly. "I didn't do it alone. None of us did." The HOA had been held accountable. Richard Halpern and the corrupt board members faced legal consequences, and reforms were put in place to prevent such injustices from happening to other homeowners, especially deployed service. Marcus's fight had sparked change, not just for himself, but for countless others who had lived under fear of arbitrary authority. As the sun set over the Williams Ranch, Marcus walked the fields, feeling the soft earth beneath his boots and the cool breeze on his face. The journey had been long and painful, filled with betrayal, frustration, and battles that extended beyond the battlefield. Yet in every challenge, Marcus had found resilience. In every setback, he had discovered The ranch, once threatened by greed and corruption, now stood as a symbol, a testament to courage, unity, and justice. For Marcus, the fight had reaffirmed something more profound than land: the enduring power of community, the strength of brotherhood, and the unbreakable spirit of a man who refused to surrender. And on Inside True Stories, this story serves as a reminder: no matter the odds, when courage meets justice, even the most impossible battles can be won.